in this Ask Me Anything, we've got 2 questions given to us by Lindia. The first question is that she's got to a point with Tilly that she's moving faster. The dog's moving faster than the handler, and she's now getting to the point where she needs to reconsider if she needs to use a longer leash, even though that means that it's going to take her longer to reward the dog because she'll be further away. This is a good question, and the subject of what length of leash to use and even what type of leash to use has been very under discussed in our classes. So I just want to put out some thoughts for you. First off, try everything in training. Instead of wondering about whether or not it would be a good idea, and instead of listening to some guy's opinion about whether it's the right option for you, just try it. Just grab a longer leash and start running your dog on a longer leash. Grab a shorter leash. Start running your dog on a shorter leash. Figure out which one's working for you, what suits your temperament, what suits your dog's temperament. Now, let's get into some theory about leashes and leash handling. Basically, there are 2 problems that leash handling needs to solve. The first problem is the leash getting caught in the environment or on the dog, and this usually happens because the leash is too long, or the handler is mismanaging the leash length that they're using. If your leash is dragging on the ground and or really low and wrapping around table legs, and your dog steps over the leash, that's the main reason the leash gets caught, then you have too long of a leash. And there are 2 solutions: get a shorter leash, or learn how to use the longer leash better. Which option you choose is up to you and your dog. Again, you need to practice. You should be the best leash handler you can be, but sometimes it's just too long of a leash. You give me 100-foot leash, I'm not going to use 100 feet ever. So at some point the leash gets ridiculously long, and that's wrong. But then the second problem is that the leash gets tight and prevents the dog from searching a part of the search area. Or even pulls them directly off of a hide, which it's interesting that your second question has to kind of do with the dog not venturing into an area. I don't think that was off-leash, but still, we'll get to the second question later. So the shorter the leash, the more likely you're going to be to pull the dog off of it, inadvertently, right? Because there's just not a lot of play, a lot of give where you could feed more line. If you've only got a 3-foot leash, well, guess what? You've only got 3 feet, and then the dog's hitting the line. So somewhere in the middle there, between a leash that's just way too short and a leash that's way too long, that's where we have to play. And every search environment and every leash handler and every dog is different. I feel very comfortable on anywhere from 6 to 20 feet of line. You start giving me longer than 20 feet of line, and it starts getting kind of convoluted. Even when I'm working with my horses, if I've got a longer line than that, there's a lot that can go wrong. You can step on it, it can wrap around you, the horse can step on it. Having longer than 20 for me is excessive. Having shorter than 6 to me, I've worked on a 4-foot leash mostly as a training exercise. I don't think I'd ever do it in trial. But using, you should be experimenting everywhere from 6 to 20 in my opinion. If you're on a 10 and your dog's telling you it's too short, and because they're constantly hitting the end of it, move up to a 12, move up to a 15. Now, about the question about I'm going to be too far away so I can't reward fast enough. In training, okay, first off, the hide should be paired. So timing should be a non-issue because the hide has been paired. So the dog got a reward instantly. Secondly, there's this amazing instantaneous reward that every single person has access to. It's called your voice. So the dog gets to the hide, you start praising. If you're praising, then you've rewarded at the right time. And however long it takes you to get there and reward them, that's fine. Now that said, if she's not staying on the odor long enough for you to get there, well, that just means that you need to train better. You need to make sure that dog will wait for you by rewarding frequently and heavily. And don't get into this habit of, oh, good dog, here's your treat. That is the number one way to kill drive. If you want to have a dog that will hit that odor and never leave it until you essentially make them leave, then you need to, when they get there, you need to praise like you mean it, not just a gesture. Yes, good dog. No, praise them like you mean it, and reward them multiple times. Those are all great in training. Now let's talk about trial and timing in trial. So let's give you the benefit of the doubt, and you're going to reward as quickly as you can in competition. So let's see how long that takes. So the dog finds it, and your brain has to register that the dog's found it. So let's be generous and say it only takes you 1 second. 1 second for the dog to find it and you to register that. So 1 Mississippi, you say alert. Alert takes part of a second, not a whole second. The judge has to hear you say alert. Then the judge has to say yes. You have to hear the judge say yes, process that, and then begin rewarding your dog. So by the time your dog's found it, best case scenario, it's going to take you 3 to 5 seconds to reward the dog. Probably longer. Especially since I know some of you don't call it the first time. The dog has to go back 2 or 3 times for you to call alert. So if you're past 2 seconds of reward error discrepancy, there's nothing to be complaining about timing. Your timing is gone. There's no good timing in that situation. So the best, I wouldn't worry about being too far away. You're not going to reward at the right time in trial, period, even if you're right on top of her, right? So just know in training, you'd be pairing, but in trial, you've trained to the point where the dog's just going to wait for you. And you just shouldn't worry about how far you are in being able to reward her quick enough at a trial. No, that's not what you're worried about. You're worried about making sure the dog has access to the odor. That's what's going to hold you back, not your reward timing. I think that should answer a lot of people's questions. Now, and with leash types as well, you should be experimenting with leather, biothane, those gripper leashes. Just experiment with a lot of different types of leash. I think a lot of people follow the trend and just buy a biothane long line. And I use a biothane long line as well, but, if you don't experiment, you don't know, maybe you don't like biothane. Maybe you really, once you try some other leashes, you realize, man, I just love leather. And so, I would highly recommend you, every time you go to class, if you see someone using a new leash, hey, would you mind if I used your leash during my run? I'm looking at different leash types. Would you mind? And most people more sure, use it. And they'll tell you, I got it from this place, and, they like their service, or I don't like their service. You should buy them from this vendor or something. Don't be shy. Make some friends and let borrow people's leashes and see if you like it. I'm always willing. I have my leashes at class, so I'm always willing to let people use my leashes so they can see whether they like it or not.